The Alienist didn't get the strongest reception from critics when it first aired in March 2018, more than 2 years ago. But it did score some Emmy nominations and some Golden Globe nominations as well. And I think a large part of that is to do with the fact that people really just enjoy mystery thrillers, even ones that are a little bit subpar and have some significant flaws. And people love period dramas, and the period costuming and the production design here continue to be immaculate. So let me get into my thoughts on Angel of Darkness, which is the second chapter. I mean, you could refer to it as a second season. I feel like some people might object to that because it's technically supposed to be its own thing. It has its own IMDb page, but I think it's basically just a continuation of what went on before, and it's as much a second season as many shows are that call themselves such. But before I get into my thoughts on this adaptation of Caleb Carr's novel, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'm going to be doing weekly reviews of this show as they air 2 episodes every week, apparently. It's going to be done very, very quickly. And Perry Mason, which I'm also reviewing on HBO, and other shows as they come out. So please consider subscribing, and if you give me a like, I'd really appreciate it. So getting into my thoughts, took me a little bit to warm up to this episode. I think that right off the bat, I've noticed this trend in period dramas lately that they have to make sure that you realize that their characters are very, very woke. So almost immediately they establish that the bad guys are all sexist mongrels, and the good guys are, while perhaps flawed, they will respect women and they will respect minorities, so that you know that they're good guys and they're not just good for the era. So this show, right off the bat, they have this woman, and they start in media res, so it was a little bit confusing. They have this woman being executed because her child has been killed, but there's no body, so nobody knows what happened. And essentially people say, well, you wouldn't be executing her if she was a man, even an immigrant, but you're doing this because she's a woman and she's an immigrant, which, you know, someone pointed out, times don't really change. Here, you know, there were strong Green Mile vibes during this execution. That movie just brings me to tears every time. And just a horrible, horrible way to die. They talk about how humane the electric chair is, and obviously it's not very humane. The scene played out in an interesting fashion. I liked the way that Sarah, played by Dakota Fanning, came at the people that were executing her, but I felt like this scene was ludicrous because she would have been dragged away immediately. They wouldn't have let her speak for a moment. But I admire her courage for speaking up, and I liked that she was able to get the character played by Ted Levine, Chief Thomas Burns. She got him to say that the quote that she said was wrong about rebellion, and then she got him with the "it's from Thomas Jefferson." So that was very, very clever. This season, I feel like she's being a little bit hard to like as a protagonist. I would have said she was my favorite character in the first season. I preferred her both to Laszlo and to John, but this season I find her to be a little bit grating. I think it's interesting because I feel personally that she's very smart and she has a lot of good attributes, but they're working really hard to reverse the gender roles with the way that her character is leading the investigation. Her character is the one rescuing John from the Dusters. So I find that a little bit forced, and I don't think it rests that easily in the narrative. And part of my problem is I think there's this tension whenever you do a period drama. How do you portray things? Do you portray things the way that they were, or do you portray your protagonists overcoming obstacles in a way that no one really did at that time? Because honestly, most women weren't able to do what Sarah is doing, and it's not because they were weak, it's just because the opportunities weren't available to them. It was because of the societal situation. Women weren't even allowed to vote at this point in history, which is really quite shocking when you think about it. So I liked the scene where she rescued John in the second episode, but I felt like it was a little bit forced, as I said. I loved the outfit she was wearing, but there's something weird about Dakota Fanning's shoulders that she just doesn't quite look natural in these costumes. Whenever she's walking away from the camera, I notice it. She's just got this weird hunched posture that just doesn't quite work with the period outfits. I love her acting. She is still my preferred Fanning sister. I know that a lot of people think that her sister Elle is a stronger actress, but I'm actually partial to Dakota myself. I'm not digging the character this season as much. I liked a lot of the scenes with her, and I felt like this episode found its bearings a little bit as it went on with the dynamics between her and John and Laszlo. But at the beginning, it was kind of rough, and I could see someone getting turned off by it at the beginning. I liked the scene between her and Laszlo at the restaurant where he had ordered for her, and he had gone behind her back and approached the woman whose child had been kidnapped without her permission. And he's such a flawed character in that he just doesn't understand the damage he's done or why Sarah would be this upset with him. And he, is going on about his tangents, his philosophical tangents. And it's interesting to have a lead character that is flawed in this fashion, because it's not something that we often see. I think he is, obviously the Sherlock Holmes stand-in here, and John, for lack of a better comparison, is the Watson stand-in. But it is interesting to see. I don't think that Sherlock Holmes was ever this bad with people. Certainly, it's going to be interesting to see how Laszlo's skills as an alienist play into the mystery this season. Because in the first two episodes, they really haven't. He's really been sidelined. But we do see that he has this strong desire to get justice for this woman who was executed on the grounds of the testimony of Roose Bolton. Michael McAlliton from Game of Thrones is in this show, and he's playing Dr. Marco, who in the first two episodes, we don't have all the details, but it seems that he is killing babies. I do not do well in shows where babies die, so I'm a little bit taken aback. I forgot how dark the first season was, but they were doing the recap, and I'm like, oh yeah, this was about boy prostitutes being murdered in turn of the century New York. Wow, that is dark. So this season we're really reveling in the darkness of it once more. I feel like this show is all about peeling back the sumptuous period detail and showing the inherent ugliness underneath. And Dr. Marco is a prime example of this. I find him and the nurse who he's working with, that they're helping to get these ladies, and they're taking their babies and disposing of them, and then they're getting rid of the women who are, or putting them in the asylum, so that the men to whom they were mistresses don't have to deal with them. It's an odd plot line because I think this season the villains are really, really over the top. I don't remember how they were in season 1, to be honest. It's been too long. But this season they seem really, really one-dimensionally bad, and I feel like there's just not a lot of nuance being presented. But there seems like there's going to be more going on here. It doesn't seem as though Dr. Marco is the one who kidnapped the baby of the Spanish diplomat. And to me, it seems pretty clear that he probably didn't take the baby from the woman. It's clear she was in his custody, but it seems as though the baby somehow got taken by someone else and placed in that store. As I said, I'm not doing too well with the baby murders. I feel like it used to be you wouldn't see kids or dogs get killed on television, but now everybody's fair game. But I don't love it. It's very, very dark. Very, very dark. Teddy does not appear to be in this season, although maybe he'll make a guest appearance later. But we do have William Randolph Hearst, who John is affianced to his daughter, which is interesting. I don't know why. I feel like this is one of those in-between season things that you're always like, well, how did that happen? Because last time I checked, him and Sarah seem to have come to a kind of understanding, and yet he's this quickly engaged to someone else. Head scratcher for me. So overall, period details great. Directing is solid. the dialogue strikes me as pretty inauthentic. They keep throwing in words that they know sound period authentic, like dissembling and other such words, but overall it's too self-consciously period. It's not like, it doesn't have that authentic voice that some shows manage to include. It's amazing to me how you have so many shows right now that are similar in various ways, and there's a lot of similarities between this and Perry Mason, which is also currently airing, and I have to say I prefer that show, probably just because I think that Matthew Rhys's Perry Mason is just a more likable character. I feel that the characters here are just a little bit too vague and unlikable, but I'm going to continue watching this show. I definitely think that there's not that much coming out right now that I would skip a show with these kinds of production values and where it's a very, very interesting mystery. But I do feel like the broodingness, the darkness, the overly somber tone are a little bit wearing, and I have to say it feels a little bit forced. But I love how you feel like you could just go walking around in this world. In fact, there was this one long take where the show just followed the leader of the Dusters, who owns this apartment where the person who bought the doll said that they lived, that this leader of the Dusters was walking around and the camera just follows him through this market and through this alley. And I thought that was really impressive that they could pull that off. The costumes continue to be delightful. I particularly liked the dress that Sarah was wearing in the scene where she rescued John. And overall, I'm interested to see where this goes. But let me know what you thought in the comments. If you're interested in seeing more reviews on this channel, please consider subscribing. And as always, you can watch more videos right now.